Hello and welcome back to Chairman Meal. In this video I'm going to do a quick and oversimplified post-mortem of the history of Zimbabwe, and particularly I'll be looking at one of the greatest Zimbabweans to ever live, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. So I'll try to look at his life, at his achievements, at the conditions under which he grew up, at the conditions under which he was president, what he did for us and how he failed us. So firstly, we have to acknowledge that just as many African countries, it was not just a Zimbabwean predicament that we fell under colonization. It happened to most African countries, except for Ethiopia. But most African countries were colonized by Western powers, and Zimbabwe was unlucky enough to be colonized by the British. So when the British came, we had our own way of life, we had our own customs, we had our own government, we had our own economic system, we had our own religion. And when they came, they destroyed our economic life, they destroyed our religion, they introduced Christianity, and our religion was castigated and blamed. And even today, if you try and remind indigenous Zimbabweans that we had a religion that served us well for centuries, they'll use the Christian perspective and say that our religion was paganism, our religion is demonic. And due to the interference of Western religion, we look at our own indigenous religion as something that is barbaric and unfit for us today, but it served us well for so many years. So when white people came to gain control of our country, they used various tactics. The first was destroying our religion, the second was destroying our way of life. What do I mean by destroying our way of life? They limited the number of cattle you would have as an African. In some cases you would have 4, in some cases 9. If you had cattle above that number, they would take them. And that really destroyed the African economy. So the problems and troubles we face today, they are results of what happened back then in 1890 when we got colonized. We didn't have enough time to assimilate into the way of life, into the capitalistic system. We had our own system, as I am said, that had served well for many, many, many years, and we were suddenly thrust into a new system. We had to pay taxes, we had to do this, we were forced under the Chibaro system to work in the mines for the white people, to gain wealth for them, so that we could be able to pay taxes, all of that. And that was very unfair. And if you look at it today, if you listen to what the mainstream media, the Western media says, they fail to acknowledge those things. And it is quite unfortunate, because it is from such a background that people like Robert Gabriel Mugabe, they rose up and they saw that it was not fair for them to be second-class citizens, to be used in the mines as indentured servants. It was just 2 YOLOs away from slavery to be working, under the Chibaro system. So they had to take back control from the white men, and they launched and fought a protracted liberation struggle, and they were successful enough that we got independence in 1980. Once we got independence in 1980, we were at a very precarious position. There were many things that we could have done. One of the things was we could have taken the approach of Mandela, of the South Africans, to leave the economy in the hands of the white people, and the black people take care of the political side, while the economic side is is being handled by the white people, while the farms are in the hands of the white people. And for a while we did that. We let the white people run the farming economic sector and all of that. But after some years, in the early 90s, the war veterans, they began to ask questions. What's the meaning of this? If we fought for independence, why then is the farmland still in the hands of the white people when we fought hard? to gain back our land? And these questions were very reasonable. It was not something that we could say, well, they were being unreasonable. It's very reasonable. Back in the day, land was taken from our ancestors. We were moved to the reserves, and it was only right to correct that wrong and give the land back to its original owners. But this is where the Zimbabwean problem really came to being. The Western world did not want to appreciate the fact that it's our land as black Zimbabweans. At first, according to the terms of the Lancaster House Conference, we were supposed to distribute the land equitably. We were supposed to use the willing buyer, willing seller mode of operation. But that willing buyer, willing seller mode of operation has its own flaws. Firstly, the African was not able to buy that land because he lacked the economic means. And also, it is rather insulting to ask me to buy back land that was stolen from my forefathers. That's very insulting. Also, no white farmer was willing to relinquish the land, so really it was not a sustainable plan. And at the end of the day, the black people had to take their land forcibly. And once we started taking our land back forcibly, the white people looked at it and they were like, this is unfair, this is illegal taking of land. But why is it they didn't condemn it back in 1890 and say, well, Rhodes, what you are doing is illegal? Why didn't they? Because they only promote their own self-interest. They speak about the rule of law. They speak about justice. They speak on how they use common sense and logic to solve all problems. But where is the logic in this? Does something become rightfully yours because you stole it? No, it doesn't. So, this was the predicament Robert Gabriel Mugabe was in. In order for an economy to be vibrant, it has to meet two criteria. It's either you have to be rather self-sufficient, like China, or you have to ally yourself with the West. And unfortunately, Zimbabwe was not self-sufficient. We depended on exporting some things to gain foreign currency. And at the same time, due to the pressure that came from the war vets and Africans wanting back their land, we couldn't please the West. We couldn't live in line with them, in order to have a good economy. We had to take back the land. So this was the predicament that Mugabe was in. And just to give you a short history, Mugabe was all about reconciliation. He was even knighted back in 1994. He was even knighted by the Queen because he was so progressive. Margaret Thatcher preferred having him as the head of state. She preferred him. She didn't want Ian Smith. She preferred him. He was a liberal, but he had to face reality, and he had to cut ties with the West in order to please his own people. And really, that's when all these troubles came. I really don't know what was going on in his head, but that's when the troubles came. So that's when we started having hyperinflation. Our exports were restricted. We could not trade on the international market, and as we continued taking back our land, sanctions were heaped and heaped and heaped and heaped upon us. And Mugabe, being a Pan-Africanist, he stood his ground. He did not reverse the land reform program. He opted that we would rather starve than reverse the land reform program, and for that I'm really rather grateful that we didn't reverse the land reform program. If you look at Australia, there were black people there. Their land was taken. It's still in the hand of the white people. If you look at America, the Red Indians, their land was taken. It's still in the hands of the white people. If you look at South Africa, their land was taken. It's still in the hands of white people. I'm not saying Mugabe was a saint. He was corrupt. He supported a corrupt system. He unleashed violence on his own people. He rigged elections. But whether it was a forced move or he did it willingly, Mugabe left us with our land. Look at Australia. Look at South Africa. Look at Canada. Look at America. Look at Mexico. Look at most countries that were colonized by the white people, by the British. Yes, we are suffering, but at least we have our land. It may take us 200 years, 300 years to be self-sufficient, to have a good economy, but at least we have our land. This has been Chairman Mill. Peace. But before I go, I just have to add this. Everybody in life, we have our own battles to fight. Mugabe's generation fought for freedom. They fought for the land. They did their part. It is now the duty of my generation. The fight for my generation is to improve this economy, is to make Zimbabwe a liberal country with a good economy, to make Zimbabwe into a country which respects the rule of law, in which if elections are held, they will be free and fair. That is the duty of us, the born-free Zimbabweans. So, while we criticize Mugabe, he did his part. While we criticize his generation, they did their part. They got the country back. They got our land back. Now it's our part to improve the economy, to improve the self-image of the African. Because as long as Zimbabwe is poor, as long as Zimbabwe has a bad economy, no matter where you go, you'll still be a Zimbabwean and you'll still be looked upon with contempt. So it is our duty to liberate Zimbabwe and make it a free country. This has been Chairman Mill. Thank you for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.